solid white lines here. The district, and you all know this is the high school and the primary school, we've got the middle school, we've got Ptarmigan Ridge. The district has approximately 16 acres here, approximately 23 acres here, and there's this little chunk here off of Ptarmigan Ridge that's 4 acres. The district can expand, and when you're looking at the game tonight, one of the things that we're thinking about strongly here is that because this adjacent chunk, which is about 48 acres next to the 16, while that acreage is not fully developable because almost all of these properties, the ones that are outlined in dashed lines are potential properties for purchase. All the properties, including those that are owned by the district, are affected by the floodplain regulations. And so the acreages that I'm giving you are not going to be the developable, the actual developable acreage. It's just that's the general number that we're talking about. But it's good to keep in mind that probably somewhere between 40 and 60% of that property is going to be developable. And the best thing about the property here to the north of the high school is that it is probably more to the tune of 60% developable as opposed to some of the constraints, for example, on this property that's closer to the Puyallup River and has more setbacks. A lot of the property here has floodplain and floodway restrictions associated with it. But again, we're talking about 16 acres here, about 23 acres here. We're talking a 4-acre parcel here that's available. This is about 21 acres that's potentially available. The city's actually talking about constructing a road here to connect that would allow us to take advantage of the ball fields and this property and route traffic elsewhere. So there's some possibilities there too. One last piece of property, and I'll go to the next slide here. Okay, maybe I'll hit the other one. There we go. Sorry. So this property is the Orting Road property, and that's about 24 acres. You're probably aware that that property is, that's also restricted. A lot of it is in wetlands. It's also being used as ball fields by, I believe, one of the local service organizations here in the city. But the bottom line is that property is probably not ideal for development as a school property yet. We're going to explore its developability and the possible changes in its regulation over time, but it's probably not ideal. It is available for some, for trade or potential usage as extra property. Now, since this obviously shows the valley here, these little dots here identify Tahale and the South Hill, Puyallup South Hill Uplands Sunrise areas. Up in Tahale, we're talking with the developer there about 2 sites. One is approximately 25 acres that would be able to have a potential combination middle school, elementary school, or at least a larger campus, obviously. And then another site in that area that would be approximately 15 acres. So we're in active conversations with the developer with respect to where that might be going. We haven't started talking numbers or anything like that, although they sold property to the Sumner Bonnie Lake School District for less than market value, and we determined very quickly with them that they would be willing to offer that same kind of arrangement to the Orting School District if necessary. So we've got 2 properties there, and then in the Uplands area, there's a 10-acre piece of property, typically considered small, almost too small for an elementary school, unless, of course, we went with something like a 2-story school. So there is an opportunity there as well, and because Uplands is coming online very quickly, as you will see in the presentations that Mike and Ben will give, the growth is going to be coming primarily from the hills, and that growth is going to be coming quickly. We really need to engage in conversations with both the developers up into Harley and the developers of Uplands very soon to start anticipating where we're going to go. And that's why the planning effort that you're going through is so incredibly valuable in terms of input to the board. So with that, I will go ahead and hand the mic to Mike. And
that works out.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Terry. So tonight we've got a fun residential meeting plan for everybody. As you might see, there's a lot of information on the tables. And the reason this is sort of a culmination of all the study we've been doing, right? We've been looking at the existing conditions of facilities, we've been looking at the enrollment projections, we looked at the bonding capacity of the community, and so all these things are coming together in the deliberations that one needs to take into account when you're making a decision about going forward. Something that's important to the schools and their future here in the community. And this is a really interesting situation with the kind of growth that we're projecting. What comes first? What comes next? What can we afford and when? And there's a lot of ways you can think about the different priorities, right? You could say that we need to house the students that are coming. And here at the high school, this is a reinterpretation of the graphs that we showed you earlier into bar charts, right? So you can see enrollment growth per year. And that we've got a line here that's orange that shows how many students are in permanent buildings like this one. And then how many students in the student body are out there in portables. And if we don't build anything new, there's just going to be that many more students in portables as time goes on. And so we'd like to get this orange line with newer facilities up higher so that we have fewer students in portables. And it's interesting that if you go out to the community for a vote in late 22, late 23, right, during that 22-23 school year, it takes until 2025 to get those projects open. And in the meantime, more students have come in to schools, and until we get something built for that capacity, we're looking at portables as the solution, right? Because you need those capital dollars to build something, and those portables come out of operational dollars. And that's what's been happening all these years. As more portables come out of the sites, it's coming out of, say, the classroom. There's just so many things that are funded by the school district, right? So here's our situation. And then if you wanted to put, say, a high school project into the 2026 bond, well, then just keep in mind, that this is the situation when those 2026 bonds open in 2029. You're going to want to be thinking about that situation. At the middle school, there are only 3 grades, so that's the enrollment is a little bit smaller, 800 students, and right now, we pretty much have it covered. But then we're projecting growth after that. And so maybe it's about here in the 2026 bond, you want something ready, or later. But just remember that since there are no portables now, we don't have a gray line, but that's going to be the solution until we build something. And then at the elementary schools, what we've done is we've combined the enrollment and the capacities of both OPS and DPR. And so together, they've got capacity that looks like this. Around, what is that, 800 students, and there's getting to be 1,100 students soon. So you're going to have all these students, and this is the portable capacity that theoretically is out there. And we're going past that. And so we're going to be this many students outside of portables. So the district's going to be adding portables in the coming years. Because as soon as we can get something built, is right there in 2022. So this is just to give you a sense of what we see coming, and that you might want to look at these growth statistics as a priority for the game we play. Where are you going to put your game pieces? We have the projects we talked about way back then, we make game pieces out of. Ben's going to walk you through that in a second. But in terms of building conditions, I think we've seen that Orting Primary is some of the worst school conditions we have, and it's one of the older buildings. Farmington Ridge, they just need more capacity, right? It's a relatively new building. And then Orting Middle, new school, at capacity. Here at the high school, multiple phases. Some older, some newer, now all over the campus, portables. So, and that creates a disjointed educational experience as well as a lot of traffic fun on the site. And then the district headquarters transportation maintenance, they're the oldest buildings the district's has. So there's a situation there. Right? So we've together as a team, we've crafted a game for you tonight. Ben's going to walk us through the logistics of it. Here you go.
Before we do that, I want to jump back and point out one of the things that Michael had on his slide before this. This dashed blue line that we have right up here, that is growth without the developments. So we just wanted to point out how much growth is coming from the developments as we move toward the game. You can see that all of these students above that dashed line are coming in from the new developments. Okay, so tonight we get to play a game, and hopefully we will get to have some fun and try and solve this problem of all of these students coming into Orting. We'll try and prioritize, what happens first, what happens next. So what we want to do is look at options for timelines of schools to build, when they build, where they build, what the capacity for enrollment is, how they address our current building conditions, and keeping in mind the debt capacity that we talked about at our last meeting. So what I want everybody to do, it looks like most tables already have 3 or 4 people. If you're at a table with a placard and you are not quite 3 or 4, you may want to move to a table that's 3 or 2 so that we can kind of even it out. It'll work best if we all have people at tables of around 3 or 4. And then it would be great if each table could send one representative up. And we have 2 tables right here that have our game boards on them. Grab one of those and take them back to your table. And you can do that while we introduce kind of the gameplay here. And don't worry, we're going to go over it pretty slow, and then we'll have a chance to ask questions after that. I'll give everybody a minute to kind of get their board and get back to their table. High school expansion. Right, so as you lay your pieces down, kind of think through the sequence of, if I do this, then I'm allowed to do that. You can do it from the front to back or back to front, whatever makes sense. If you want to get a high school in there, you can put that down and then think kind of backwards through what it takes to get to that piece. But this is kind of a sample game, what it's going to look like when we're done playing tonight. You can see up there, like I said, you have your bond issues across the top. On the bottom, in the green squares, you have a proposed bonding amount based on the talk that we have with Trevor. Each piece has a cost. So you'll see any of the tokens, they have 3 costs. The top cost is if you buy it in your first bond. The middle cost.
Okay, so our priority is replace OPS, get a new primary school. Get the new property. We're hoping for this one right over here, and we're hoping great negotiating skills getting that 10 million down. We're also thinking expanding the high school capacity by 600 students and demoing OPR in the same first levy. And that puts us, gets the high school up to 1240 capacity, no change to the middle school, and then OPS would be 1319 permanent capacity with 213 unhoused students. And that our bond project is 126 million. And if we have leftover, we might move like the fields, the all-purpose field, all-weather field over. Second bond, demolish the wrestling gym, build a new gym, convert the existing main to the auxiliary gym, and add CTE space for the high school. Demo admin, and build a new admin and transportation building. We've got our field type stuff on this one to replace the stadium turf, all-weather fields and tennis courts at OMS. Do the new Uplands Elementary School and add the gym kitchen capacity at Ptarmigan. Yeah, oh, and we want to add softball and baseball fields to this all-weather fields too. We're at $170 million for that second bond. OPS capacity goes, or elementary capacity goes up to 1919 with 319 unhoused students. And then the last one, add more space to OHS, the 300 capacity. Actually 600, we did both this year, so yeah, so we're adding 600 capacity there. That puts us up to 1840 with no unhoused students. Renovate and expand the Orting Middle School, and we're guessing it's like going to be another 700. And then Tahalia. And then permanent capacity for Orting, or for OPS kids would be 2519, 80 unhoused, and that bond is at 264.
Nice work. Cool, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always hard to go first. Second board, whose game was this? All right.
Okay, similarly, our priority project was going to be replacing OPS. We put that in the first bond. We also did the kitchen gym capacity and traffic improvement at Ptarmigan Ridge in that one as well, specifically because a lot of the traffic issues on the 162 here. And then our thought process as well was that as we're now working on expanding capacity, we are going to at some point need some new kitchen facilities. And that's a great opportunity to put that in. Enhance the gym space, because what we're also looking at doing during this first bond is demolishing the wrestling gym and building some new gyms. That will serve as an anchor for a future new high school. So we're going to take care of that first. Trying to throw a few bones to everybody. The big thing that we were concerned about when we look at the challenges are, one, sticking to the budget, which I'm sure everyone else had that challenge. And two, getting buy-in from the community. Trying to throw some bones to everybody here, so we got a lot going towards the elementary schools. Wrestling is big in this community, sports are big in the community, so getting that new wrestling gym serving as an anchor for a future new high school, so getting folks excited about that. Also, we're doing that new property purchasing and replacing the stadium turf, so that sort of serves to help everybody, both the high school and the middle school athletes, also the community that uses those fields. Moving into the second bond, we really went over budget on this one, so we're hoping at some point in time somebody wins the lottery and donates a lot to the school district. We are planning to replace the high school with the larger 1,200 student high school option that was in there. Also putting in those all-weather fields, I agree, softball and baseball. Adding the tennis courts to OMS got put in there. And then we elected to expand and renovate OMS instead of going with a new school, especially since that one is so new. In this one, we also went with the renovation of the admin and transportation, and then demoing the admin. And then finally, in our last bond period, we're looking at expanding the permanent capacity by 600 students, trying to get more folks in there. And then we're thinking that by this point, a lot of those new developments are really going to have a lot more voting power. So early on, we have to play to the existing local community. That local community is going to be broadly expanded come 2030. These folks here, these new developments are going to have a lot more voting power, a lot more tax power, and they're going to be saying, why do I have to go down to the valley to go to school? So that's where our third bond period, we would be doing a new middle school in the new developments, new elementary schools in each of those new developments, and then trying to expand the permanent capacity of the high school.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, third group.
Well, we started out, I liked where we started out at the beginning, where, like you guys had, we had 3 schools represented here. And that's a really nice bond when you can hit 3 schools out of your 4. But what really drove our final decision-making was the elementary numbers that were coming in. We just didn't have capacity for them. We have 500 kids that we don't know where to put them, so that kind of shifted everything here. So definitely OPS priority. And then we put the Uplands Daybreak Elementary possible site in there because we looked at the timeline of when that was going to be developed, and that fits right within this timeline. So you've got enough where you can offset some of the growth at the elementary, which that's the thing that was really driving us. And then, which unfortunately put the high school back over here, expand the core, 300 student capacity. Then you've also got the spillover into the middle school that you're trying to take care of. During this time, you demo OPR, you demo the admin so that you can do this work over here. You add the Ptarmigan Ridge stuff right here, and then the Tahali, which when we look at the timeline, that was like 21 to 31, and that has a lot of homes in it, so that makes that available. Which then we ended up putting everything else over there. And so that's a big bond right there, 379. So, but like Ed said, our assessed valuation will be 100 billion by that time. Is that what you said? I heard 100. So that we'll put everything in there, including we were thinking a company Tesla for teaching and learning, but that'll be 20, 33, 30. But they'll probably take my license away anyway, so probably don't have to worry about it then. So that's what we came up with.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to add a Tesla game piece for the next one.
I asked this question, is this game winnable? Has anyone? I think we're set for failure. I don't think these numbers are. You won? Okay, there's a lot of planners over there. The first group had marzipan, and that's garbage. You guys had a math person. We're dreamers and philosophers tied to plans and tokens. Obviously, we had a moral obligation to deal with the elementary school. We didn't feel politically it was palatable to really pick which elementary and where it was built. So choose your elementary, pick whatever one you want, in elementary, the other two can move on down the road. Whether or not, the right decision versus what you can get yes votes on is definitely what we talked about here at the elementary site. Such small pittance to add these athletic facilities, so we thought let's just throw that candy out of the voters in the first bond to get some athletic facilities. Demolishing the wrestling gym, building new gym was first because the high school principal was at the table. And obviously, we're pushing down the high school. Frankly, the high school and portables, we still get a good education in portables, so moving that down takes second seat to getting the elementary kids housed. Then there's a lot of discussion after that, and we just stuck things right before we came up here. So I think if we would have got to numbers, we didn't deal with capacity yet. Really, frankly, the middle school, we're going to deal with numbers in the middle school probably a little bit earlier. But middle school, new elementary schools, all of these elementary schools has to be spaced out on 3 bonds. This is when you can pull them off where your money's coming from. So yeah, that was us.
I could never win the game when I was putting it together, so don't feel bad. Whose board is this?
We talked a lot about what our community will vote for. I think we started with property and Orting, primary. Those are, and while talking about the elementary school, we also were talking about beautiful kitchen, has to be a full kitchen, that is a necessity, and that would help alleviate a lot of the food issues for the full district. We also said replacing the turf, could that just be a levy bond, like instead of the bond, but maybe sprinkling it in so the voters are excited about not just building a building, we're big athletic too. We care a lot about the athletics. And the tennis courts, someone said that was already voted yes for, so we should probably not put that in. That might irritate some people. And then the demolishing that gym that we can't really use anyways, and utilize that space, get rid of those portables out there, make it a huge gym that can take care of what, a CTE and buildings around it, that added 600 kid capacity. So that's what our first bond was. And, we came in right at 106. We were right on the money. But we're really proud of that. And for me, I'm split. I've got a kindergartner and a high schooler, so kind of where we were. The next thing is the high school is packed with 600. It gave us a little bit of time. We still have about 400 kids out in portables and stuff. So by adding, expanding it a little bit, the next bond, we keep bringing back to the community that the high school is important. And the middle school is fine, just put person sports in there and make everybody happy. By adding this 600, we also only have like 26 kids in portables. That'd be amazing. That would give us a lot of space for the future. And maybe do some renovation with the middle school here to expand it. Didn't finish the math there, but it's okay. All weather fields, very important. That would last, that'd be great. We did a lot of thinking about what voters are going to say yes to. We have to sprinkle in the confetti where they are. Within here, we could also renovate the admin, the transportation. You guys all deserve that. And then Tahali was our main point. That's where most of the population is going to come from, and that's where kids are transported the farthest. And then when you talk about the price of the land, it sounds like Tahali would give us a deal. And by covering all of this, we were within 100 meters. So that was awesome. Then we can talk about demoing stuff. Demoing the elementary school, we feel like we can be flexible in there depending on where we would need the capacity. Like that was something that we could keep OPS for a little bit and repurpose it or something. And then uplands. I mean, they're going to need the school. But our focus was to Holly, they're going to have bigger, pricier houses and more kids. So that are more cool and they would pay for it.
And then I think this table is the next board.
Curtis doesn't want to talk. So we also went with the make everyone a little bit happy option, starting with demolishing the wrestling gym because we thought that made people happy. It gives us 300 kids at the high school right away. We also talked about how we do all the sports things off the bat. There's an income thing that comes as well, that how we can use those facilities then on the weekends and all that. So why those sports facilities right off the bat. And replace OPS and add the kitchen capacity, all the things to Termigan. Not that I'm biased in that decision at all, but what it does do is allow for when we need portables to make all the things happen, it allows there to be capacity to put those portables in. So as much as I don't love the idea of kids in portables, I'm aware of the fact that to make these things happen, kids are gonna have to be in them. And right now there's no place to put portables at the elementary without doing these things, so. We got to 117.4 out of 100, so we went a little bit over, but we were told that was within the math allowed. Then we went to the next phase, expand out the high school with another 600 kiddos, demo admin and add the admin transportation, just that allows for as we expand all the other things in the district, having a central space that those things are already improved and that infrastructure is built. Buy new property and then do the uplands at that point, knowing that those kids will be there and those parents at that point are already getting grumpy that their kids are in portables because they've been living in portables at Termigan, so they're ready to vote for us, hopefully. So that at that point, then moving on, add again to expand to OHS with the idea that OHS stays all things down in here and it takes over this whole place. We had Lovey. That place, that OHS stays this site and doesn't move to another site. So we continue to expand on this each time until we make a full capacity here. At that point, look at what we need to do as far as middle school and where our kids are at that point, and then add to the Holly at that point, knowing that those kiddos will, parents will not want to drive to the valley. And you're on budget on the second one.
Thank you. All right, who wants to come up to this table?
All right, I'm sensing a theme here. Everybody wants to replace OPS. So we went ahead and did the same thing. We recognized the biggest need is OPS, and the administration building and transportation needs to be upgraded. So we put those in there, and then everybody, it seems like, had the same idea. They wanted to give some candy to the voters and give them some upgrades on the fields and get those replaced, get those fixed. And if you can see, we kind of focused on the primary schools, the elementary schools early on, and then we went to our second biggest need, which is the high school. And we expanded the high school, demolished the wrestling gym, got all that new stuff out there. And we added a new elementary school up in Tahala, or Tahalia, however you like to say it. And then for the third phase, we finally put some love into the middle school, because by that time, they're going to need some help too. And we got the new elementary school up at the Uplands. And what else was I going to add in there? Oh, we came in at 111.4 for the first bond. We went a little high on the second one. We came in at 236, and then shot for the moon on the third.
I want to thank everybody for all of the work you put into this. It's really amazing. I hope it helps to highlight just the magnitude of the planning project that we have in front of us. I know when I did the boards, it was really hard to be even close to on budget on every single bond package. So congratulations to people who hit any of them. And if you hit more than one, double kudos. And then Ed, is there anything you'd like to say as we wrap up?
Just a couple things. One, I hope that you see when we go through this that really there's no way to separate where we're at today from where we're growing. We are over capacity between 30 and 60% in 3 of our 4 buildings, and the 4th is almost there. And there's no way to rectify that if we don't embrace growth. So we know we have to do that. You're thinking about how do we stage this and tell the story. This is going to be critical for the board to weigh and think through what that looks like and sounds like, and help us to relaunch what eventually will be a bond campaign, because we're still going to have to get stakeholder input, teacher input, community input, and help us to work our way all the way through when this first phase is. But you can see it's not just a first phase and we're done. It's a first phase, second phase, third phase. So this information will help us to build, I'll say, a 10 to 12-year vision, so that when we move forward, it's going to be in a connected way, in a way that will resonate with you, and we know if it resonates with you, it's going to resonate with our voters. And we talked about who wins. Well, the kindergarten classroom I was in today, I would say they're going to win, because we can see what their life looks like today, and by the time they're graduates, think about what that looks like for them, of what we could do if we all come together. And we know when we embrace growth, it's never been more affordable for the Orting taxpayer. Right? When that assessed valuation doubles, triples, quintuples, the price I'm paying is coming down, down, down. So how do we smartly use that tax money in a way that's going to make sense and benefit all of us? These thoughts they're going to be digested by this team, and they're going to come back to you on our very last meeting on the 26th. They're going to see where that will of the group and where the pulse is, and try to turn that into an initial draft of a report to the board, and that will get us going. So, wonderful thinking. Thank you for your time. Appreciate being away from your families and loved ones and work and all that other kind of stuff, because this is really going to launch us for years to come. Orting used to be we ran a bond, and 20 years later we do something else. You can see we're going to run something, and 2 or 3 years later we're going to run something. 2 or 3 years after that we're going to run something, and we're not getting out of growth for a while. But what I can promise you, it's going to be amazing. Whatever we end up building, it's going to be awesome for kids. So thank you, have a wonderful night, appreciate your time and being here, and we'll see you again on the 26th for our last meeting.